I played Resident Evil 4 in VR and I have some thoughts. Wes Anderson delivers an odd and enthralling cinematic tribute to journalism. And what the hell is going on between FIFA and EA Sports? All that and the latest and everything cool today in The Rundown. Hey, welcome to The Rundown. My name is Victor Lucas, and I'm so happy that you've joined me here in the Electric Playground. Today's episode is brought to you by the Gaming Stadium. They are Canada's leader in online esports tournament facilitation. They've got tournaments happening every single weekend that you don't want to miss out on, and you can find out all about them at tgs.gg. Today's episode is dedicated to Liquor Run, who said, I love most of Nolan's Batman trilogy, but he really doesn't know how to film or choreograph fight scenes. They were awkward, slow, oddly cut, and not very inspiring. Reeves' action looks incredible, and I cannot wait for the adrenaline-fueled, beautifully shot fights via an unhinged Batman. I have to say, I do love the action that I've seen in the trailer so far. I think you're right on the money there with that comment there, Liquor Run. I love that hallway scene where the only thing that you see is when the machine guns are lighting up and all the bullets are ricocheting everywhere. It just looks insane. I cannot wait for the Batman. All right, let's get started with the rundown and my thoughts on Resident Evil 4 in VR. It is the perfect time of year to jump into Resident Evil 4 again, especially if you're playing it in VR on the Oculus Quest 2, which I have been over the last couple of nights. This is a beautiful recreation of the Capcom classic. It's one of the best survival horror games ever made, and it has made the move to VR very, very well. Armature Studios is the team behind this port, and man, they did a fantastic job. First thing you're going to know is that all the cut sequences that you and story bits that you get within the game are not played in first-person perspective. You're not in VR mode with that stuff. It's all displayed as part of a window that it looks like a giant screen television when you've got the headset on, which was kind of cool. Also, the visuals themselves it's not like a remake or anything like that. It's not like a full-on remaster. It's been up-res to a pretty formidable resolution on the Oculus Quest 2 headset, but you're dealing with some dated-looking character models and, not that creepy monsters and enemies and stuff that you have to take care of. What is refreshing, though, is the movement controls are really fun in VR. You can play it like I did with full mobility on, so you can play it like a traditional first-person shooter. That's going to make some people motion sick. I totally get that. I was able to play it that way, and I have been really enjoying it that way. It's really cool to move in a direction and shoot in another direction. You just feel a lot more tuned in to the action. Of course, you have all of the collectibles and all of the little secrets and things like that, but you're seeing all of the game's killer devices from a completely different perspective. And I've got more to play, and I'll come back with some final thoughts on it, but man, I have been so freaking impressed with the labor of love that this game obviously is. It's one of the most refreshing and enjoyable bits of escapism that I've experienced so far on the Oculus Quest 2 headset. It's the full game, which is really impressive. It's an incredible game. I don't think that maybe this is the first way that you should play Resident Evil 4, and there's rumors that it's being remade right now, which that will be exciting to see, but it still stands the test of time. Even if you go back to the very first edition of Resident Evil 4, it's still incredibly playable in 2021. So I would say that you probably want to play it somewhere else first, whether, you play it on the Wii or the GameCube or the many iterations that Resident Evil 4 has already had, the original game, before you come to VR. But if you're familiar with this game and its mechanics and its crazy action-packed characters and moments, you're going to love this game on the Oculus Quest 2. This is a great surprise. I think it's a great pickup for the device, and I really hope that Oculus does this again with some other classic video games. It's really cool to experience titles like this that are so ingrained in the history of video games from this totally different perspective. I've got more to play, and I'll come back with the full thoughts, but man, I'm giving it a big thumbs up so far. Really fun. All right, now let's switch over to movies. Yesterday, I saw Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch, and I've got my review for you right now. In what is being described as a tribute to the esoteric and impactful journalistic storytelling that you would find in the pages of The New Yorker, Wes Anderson returns with his latest movie, which is perhaps his most Wes Anderson movie of all time, and it features an army of different stars. Timothée Chalamet, Léa Seydoux, Benicio del Toro, Adrian Brody, Frances McDormand, Owen Wilson, Jeffrey Wright, and the list goes on and on and on. And I don't want to spoil too much because for a big part of The French Dispatch, Dispatch, you are waiting for those cool surprises. Tilda Swinton is also a standout in this movie as well. This is a film about a wacky artistic magazine that is inserted into a Kansas newspaper, and it's about a bureau that's set up in this small town in France, and it's filled with all kinds of colorful writers that approach the art and culture and society that exists within this small French community from a completely different set of perspectives. So what we get with this movie is a bunch of these little episodic vignettes that are very much chapter-based, as if you're rifling through the magazine itself. Each story within the film goes off in a completely different direction. Jeffrey Wright's story, I think, was the standout one for me. He plays a food critic or a food writer that talks about the culinary world of this small town, and he gets caught up in this police drama with a kidnapping and some gunfire. It escalates into utter insanity, but at the heart of it, Jeffrey Wright still has to talk about the food somewhat. And Bill Murray plays the curmudgeonly but kind-hearted editor that really believes in his writers and their paths to find truth in the words that they put down on paper. And so he has these really cool intersections and moments with each one of these headliner writers. One of them is Owen Wilson, who rides a bicycle around this small town and tries to paint the most colorful picture he can of the world that he is living in. Another big marquee story in the movie, but also in this fictional French Dispatch magazine, is the one that Tilda Swinton is writing about this psychotic institutionalized murderer who is also an incredible artist who becomes world-renowned for his paintings, and all of the commentary that exists within the storytelling there about how if you're an artist, you should be given some extra freedoms to kind of live your life the way that you want to. So some interesting examinations there. Timothée Chalamet's storytelling, he's paired up with Frances McDormand, is all about the youth empowerment movement in France and fighting for what you believe to be true and right. And of course, Frances McDormand is this wizened, very experienced journalist who comes into contact with all these kids that are fighting for something they feel so strongly about. And so there's an interesting intertwine there. And of course, everything is framed with the same kind of textures and color palettes and even 4x3 or squared off framing that we've come to expect out of Wes Anderson pictures. But it is a pretty sprawling amount of story that we're dealing with here, even within the confines of those squared frames that Wes Anderson plays in. And you can tell there's this really showy, stagey emphasis on practical effects, almost as if we're going to a theater to watch a play. You'll see scenery kind of just be shuttled in and shuttled out. And we even have a play within the movie which comes off incredibly well. It's a play based off of one of the stories. It's interesting to see how there's connective tissue between these different storylines and these different writers, and there's all kinds of zany characters that exist on the periphery of these star writers as well. It's just a joy to behold. Like, it's a weird movie. It knows it's weird. It knows it's going out of the way to kind of paint this beatific picture of this period in time. This idea of a magazine that's home to these idealists and their visions and their writing and their unique perspectives on the world. It's just tremendous escapism. And I just love the commitment that Wes Anderson always has to his artistic vision. I'm a huge fan of his films. Loved him since Bottle Rocket, loved the Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore, Moonrise Kingdom and the Grand Budapest Hotel. I mean, this guy has got a style. Even his animated stuff, Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs, and there is an animated sequence in this film as well. He is such a quirky, wonderful voice in cinema. You know his style immediately, and this is such interesting subject matter to play with and to have fun with. It's not really deep introspection. It's not like art house, like we're going to live with these people and really get to know them. Everybody's got these weird tics and idiosyncrasies and eccentricities that make them a little larger than life, but life is filled with people like that too. And I think that's the genius in Wes Anderson's work, is that he gets these oddballs to populate his frame, and they don't feel real, but it feels like a real journey and a real escape. This is a wonderful movie. I absolutely loved it. Wes Anderson has become one of my favorite filmmakers out there. If you're not a fan of his, this is not going to be the movie that turns you into one. I will say that. But I really did love this one. I'm going to give The French Dispatch a 9 out of 10. All right, now let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Electronic Arts and FIFA, the organization behind pro soccer and the big group that puts on the World Cup every 4 years. EA and the FIFA group have been in negotiations for a long time, and it's coming to a head. I think the deal has to be put together to kind of sustain the way that it has been for many years, because EA's had this exclusive relationship with FIFA, and of course has made FIFA one of the biggest brands in video games, not just sports video games, for many, many years. FIFA wants to branch out and use their very iconic name across other video game properties and work with other different providers. And EA has been saying that they have obviously built up this really popular brand alongside them. The FIFA video game is the biggest licensed revenue source that the FIFA organization has. So it's an incredibly important arrangement. EA, I think quite rightly, they've spent billions of dollars over many years sort of keeping and tying that exclusivity. They don't want to extend that out. And then the FIFA organization is also asked to increase the amount that EA should be paying for the rights to use their name. And what has happened now is EA Sports has actually trademarked a couple of different brands that FIFA might evolve into. The FIFA video game might be called EA Sports FC for football club. So the terms of this existing deal between FIFA and EA Sports wind up after the next World Cup in Qatar. But it's very possible that we are going to see the end of the FIFA brand name attached to EA Sports soccer game, which is wild because I've been playing the FIFA game since the Genesis days, almost every single year, and have just watched this industry balloon around this video game. It's always been great. It's always been a lot of fun, and EA's not only spent a lot of money on the FIFA licensing, but on all of the other licensing arrangements around the world, because it's such an international sport, and there's lots of other leagues, and they get all the players' names, and that's been the huge determining factor between the competition with Konami and their soccer series over the years. If you've wanted to play with all the real players and the real arenas and the real leagues and the real teams, you've had to go in FIFA's direction. It's made them incredibly successful, as has the Ultimate Team stuff as well. Yes, it comes down to money. It comes down to these huge conglomerates not seeing eye to eye, and I think there is valid points on both sides, and I think what is likely going to happen is that there won't be an agreement, and FIFA is going to try to partner with other companies to bring out other FIFA branded video game entertainment, and EA Sports is still going to have this powerhouse soccer video game, and it's likely going to be called EA Sports FC. I don't know if it's going to happen next year. Wouldn't be surprised if it does. I think it's coming. I think we are seriously looking at the end of FIFA, the brand, on EA Sports game. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think EA should stick to its guns and not pay the extra money that FIFA is asking for and rebrand their game to something else? Or should they work it out with FIFA and continue to keep the game called FIFA for the foreseeable future? Let me know in the comments below. Imagine a mashup between Bionic Commando and Gunstar Heroes, and you'll have a pretty good idea of what to expect out of Tribute Games' new title, Steel Assault, which I have been playing and thoroughly enjoying on my Nintendo Switch, especially on the Nintendo Switch OLED. This is a sprite-based game built by a company called Zenovia Interactive, and Tribute published this game, which is interesting because now they're publishing other developers' stuff out there. It's a 2D scrolling game with some verticality. It's a run-and-gun shooter where you have all of these incredibly well-animated sprite-based enemies to contend with, and there is an amazing conceit in this title. You have a zip line that you can shoot out at any time, and this helps you scale up buildings and elevator shafts. It will help you get from one ledge to another, and you can shoot out the zip line on diagonals or side to side on a sort of more horizontal plane, and you can also be using your electric whip. So you've got this kick-ass electric whip that takes care of enemies and their bullets as well. There's a bit of a bullet hell element in this game, and you can use the zip line to create all kinds of interesting strategies for yourself, including being on top of a platform like you are in one of the boss fights, and it's being bombarded and it's completely cascading with fire, and you slide off of that platform and at the last second double jump and shoot out the zip line, and then you continue to whip from there. You only get one life per attempt, but the reloading back into the game is pretty quick. And the big deal with this game is that it's not very long. It's not going to take you a long time. Once you understand the mechanics, it's incredibly tough at first because there's a bunch of new things that you're contending with, which is wonderful. And it's so flashy and visceral, like it's just in your face like crazy, like so much detail. This is the kind of pixel game that we dreamed we would one day have when we were playing Gunstar Heroes and Bionic Commando. And it sort of capitalizes on the technology that's available to us and delivers like honestly, a state-of-the-art pixel-based experience. It's so freaking gorgeous. The transitions between story bits. It's a game set in the future, a post-apocalyptic America in 2046, and you play a guy named Taro Takahashi, and you're going up against this evil inventor named Magnus Pierce, and he's got all of these robotic creations, and so you're fighting little drones and characters with machine guns and laser guns, and of course there's fire turrets and all kinds of badass giant robots and things that come out to get you, and every level and every stage is gorgeous and a beautiful surprise. You are going to beat it handily, though. It'll take you a day, basically, to see everything in the game. You can up the difficulty. There's an arcade mode in the game as well. But I have to say, I think it's such a beautiful work of art. It's such an incredible interactive gift that it's so worth the experience. Even if it's a little disappointing that it's short, I hope that there's more. I hope that there's a Steel Assault 2, or we get to extend into this world. I think it's an incredible calling card, and it deserves to be in your library if you are a huge fan of 2D action-packed titles like this. I'm going to give Steel Assault 8.5 out of 10. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for the rundown today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again soon with a fresh one for you. Thanks for hitting that subscribe button if you're a fan of the videos that we produce, and the little bell to be notified when we post new stuff. Thanks for following our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/EPN. And thank you especially to all of our EPN members. You guys are awesome. We'll see you soon, and until then, play forever.